Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting of Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. I'll call the meeting to order and ask if you'll stand and observe O Canada with us. Thank you. Please join me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Item 2.3 is the adoption of the open session agenda. Councillor Richardson, I believe you have that.
I do. Thank you. Through you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Bale, that the agenda for the open session of the regular council meeting of Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021 be adopted as circulated.
Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in today's agenda? Seeing none. Notices and information by members of council and staff. Does anyone on council have anything they would like to announce? Councillor Elmsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After a long wait, and we have great news in Fenelon Falls that the downtown renovations will begin. It'll be a complete renovation going from Bond Street to Water Street. And the folks are staging this week the equipment in Fenelon, and they'll start March 1st, and they will do as much as they can until the 24th of May weekend, at which they will close up, and then they will come back on Labor Day weekend and complete the job hopefully by December. And just a heads up to everyone, the traffic in Fenelon may be held up a little bit if you're trying to go through there, but all our stores and businesses will be open, and we welcome you up there. Just be patient, but come and visit. Thank you.
Thank you. Good news. Councillor Seymour Fagan, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you. I just wanted to let everybody know, now that we are in orange, that all the shops in Bobcaygeon are open. So if anybody is in need of anything, you can come out to Bobcaygeon. There might be limited hours, but they are open, and come out and support our local shops. And also, Bobcaygeon was nominated for Hockeyville. So fingers crossed we hit in the top 4. We'll see in a couple weeks. That's it.
Sounds good. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few announcements. The first one, the TD Bank in Omemee has relocated their ATM, and it will be now located in Omemee Foodland, so existing customers can use that banking machine. So that will be within the next couple of weeks. That'll be occurring. I'd like to thank Kyle Dalgleish out of the TD Bank and Omimi Foodland for working to get that relocation of that important ATM. The Rayboro Post Office will be reopening on March 10th, and the new post office will be at 10 Peace Road. And I'd like to thank Post Office for helping me out and trying to relocate a new post office instead of having just post boxes. People were having to go to Omimi. Now they'll get their post office back, and I think that'll be a great thing for Rayboro. So that's tentatively for March 10th. It'll be opening in Rayboro. Same services as were offered as before the previous post office. And third, charter member Darwin German, formerly of Dunsford, he belongs to the Dunsford and District Lions Club. He received the International President's Service Award, so congratulations to Darwin for his work in the Dunsford and District Lions Club. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor O'Reilly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the heels of Councillor Elmsley, the Kent Street construction, and Lindsay and Councillor Dunn and I kind of share that downtown's going well, and all indications are they're on schedule and ahead of time, and it looks good. They're working through the winter. The International Plown Match announced this week that they're going to be they're making plans for a traditional plown match and re-envisioned plown match, subject to health concerns, on October 13th to the 16th at Lindsay X. There's a new restaurant, actually it's in border on Councillor Dunn and myself ward at what we call Dewdrop Inn, Highway 7 and Elm Tree Road, just opened recently, called Lucky 7. As you're all aware, there's certainly was a COVID-19 outbreak at Crescent Care in Lindsay on McLaughlin Street, and as of yesterday, 17 residents have passed away. And also at the LEX, the Canadian Snowcross Racing Association is hosting 3 competitions at the LEX, February 20th to 22nd last weekend, this weekend the 27th and 28th, and March 5th and 7th. But there's actually, no spectators are allowed, and it's under the approval of the local health unit.
Thank you. Anyone else on council want to announce anything? Any members of staff? Hearing nothing, we'll move down to council minutes. I need a motion to receive and adopt the special council meeting minutes of January 26th, the regular council meeting minutes of January 28th, special council meeting minutes of February 2nd, and the special council meeting minutes of February 16th as amended. And in your folder, there's just a slight amendment on clarification on some wording. So if I can get a move by Councillor Elmsley, seconded by Councillor Vale. Any questions? All in favor? That's passed. We don't have any deputations today. Correspondence 7.1 is correspondence from Alan Irvine regarding the construction of an outdoor rink. There was a list of 700 names submitted to the clerk's office in support of this correspondence. It wasn't in the official option of a petition, so it's just on his correspondence. Can I recommend we receive and refer to staff for some options back in Q3 of 2021? Are you okay with that? Thank you. Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor O'Reilly. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just got some comments on this. Mr. Irwin put this together in about 4 weeks. He called me up. He asked me why we don't have one. How do we go about getting one? I gave him the basic information on why we don't have one. He said, "Can I get something going?" I said, "Certainly. I'll give you a hand when it comes along." Next thing I know, he's got 700 signatures. It sounds like there's a need that we didn't know about, and I wish him the very best of luck, and I'm looking forward to the staff's report.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, and I wonder, as part of that, we can just add to the report that an outdoor rink also, I guess the report's going to be about an outdoor rink, but I don't want to limit it just to Lindsay. I was wondering if we could put one up in the north area, because the people in Norland, and specifically Ward Park, have been fundraising and working towards this very idea for a few years now, and kind of got waylaid over the last year, but they're eager to get going too. So I'd like the report to come back about outdoor rinks in general for for Norland and Lindsay, or citywide.
So receive and refer to staff for options back in Q3 on outdoor rinks in general in the city, just on different options. You okay with that? And seconded, you're okay with that? You got that, Sarah? Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. 7.2 is correspondence regarding access to the amphitheater in Fenelon Falls. Again, if I can recommend that we receive and refer to staff as part of the ongoing approvals for the amphitheater in Fenelon. Will you move that, Councillor Elmsley? Thank you. Second, Councillor O'Reilly. Any questions, comments? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Committee of the Whole, item 9. We have no correspondence regarding Committee of the Whole recommendations. We have a motion that the minutes of the February 9th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting be received, and the recommendations included in section 9.3 of the agenda, save and accept 937, 939. 937 is the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. 939 is the Fleet Services Review, and 9311 is the proposed amendments to the dock encroachment policy. Any other extractions from Committee of the Whole? Then save and accept those three, that the recommendations be adopted. Moved by Councillor Elmsley, second by Councillor Dunn. Any further questions? All in favor? That's passed. First extraction, 937, Councillor Ashmore, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move as printed. Just a comment. Should I move to
Yeah,
receive?
let's get a seconder. So as printed, second by Councillor Seymour Fagan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a great committee here that's been put together. Some great people here that are going to be appointed, very well qualified. But one thing I've noticed, there's no female representation. So make up 50% of the population, and we don't have one woman that's on that. I just find that kind of, I'm just saying. I just found that kind of odd that there was no representation.
Yeah, no, and, but just keep in mind that we're giving the committee the authority to appoint the community representatives that'll be on this community. The ones that are appointed here are just the four, myself and Councillor Dunn, and the two police chiefs, Director Sutherland. We're going to appoint community representatives, so we'll certainly, from a community representation, we need to make sure we're representing the whole community. So we'll take your comments under consideration. Thank you. Any other comments? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Second extraction is 939, the Fleet Services Review. Councillor Vail, you extracted that?
Thank you. I'll give you a motion to receive first, and then I've got a follow-up motion I'd like to make, and I'll speak to it if I get a seconder.
Okay, motion to receive, second by Councillor Yeo. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'd like to make a motion that a feasibility plan and timeline for transforming the city's fleet to being fully electric be brought back by the end of the year. And if I get a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Okay, we've got a motion to receive, so let's vote on that first, and then we'll go to your follow-up. Sorry, I got confused with the direction you wanted to go. So a motion to receive, all in favor? That's passed. You're putting forward that motion. Do you have that, Sarah? Okay, and you'll second that, Councillor Richardson. Go ahead, Councillor Vail.
Thank you. So I think the consultant's report at the last meeting is very timely when you look at everything that's going on out there. So speaking from experience in the automotive industry right now, the manufacturers are moving very quickly to change everything over to electric, to the point that the last 4 weeks I've been in a number of meetings with General Motors as to the retail expectations or whatever of dealers, right? GM has moved their timeline up considerably to the point that by 2025, they'll have 30 fully 100% electric vehicles on the market ready for sale. And they're in the process of having their retail dealer network set up to A, service them, B, sell them, and have public-facing charging stations installed at their locations. GM's plan is by 2030 that they will not be producing gas vehicles anymore. So I think it's timely. Out of the meetings that I was at with General Motors, the comment that kept coming up is that this is coming, and it's coming faster than what people think it is. And that's why they started reaching out to the dealers to give us an opportunity to get infrastructure in place. And I think from our standpoint, I think we would be wise to follow the same advice. It is coming, and we would be wise to look at a future plan as to when we convert and what we need as far as infrastructure in place to do that. So I'd like to see a plan come forward by the end of the year as to how they think we can do that.
Thank you. Can I just get you to read your motion again, just for my clarification?
Yep, that a feasibility plan and timeline for transforming the fleet to being fully electric be brought back by the end of year.
End of year 2021. Perfect. And your second. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Richardson? Go ahead.
I would, thank you. I'm echoing the same sentiments as Councillor Vail. I know myself, I'm a big person of watching the documentaries about electric vehicles and how a lot of the factories are starting to retrofit now to meet that demand, because there's going to be a huge shift, and all the big players have already, made that mandate that they're moving forward, and they're moving forward quickly. So I think this is a good supporting memo putting forward right now, so we can actually look for the future.
Thank you. Councillor O'Reilly, go ahead.
Thank you. Just for clarification, when you mention fleet, are you what specifically are you referring to? Because there'll probably be some vehicles like loaders, and other by fleet, do you just mean like cars, pickups, vans, or just for clarification to the mover?
I think the entire fleet, because what's going on right now isn't just cars and trucks and vans, it's heavy equipment and everything that they're working on and developing as well. So some of the heavier equipment might not be available as quickly as the more mainstream vehicles, but it is coming. So I think we should look at, or it would be wise to look at the whole fleet.
Okay. Councillor Yeo, you got your question answered? Okay. Any other questions on the follow-up motion? I'll call the question then. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you, Councillor Vail. 9311 was the proposed amendments to the dock encroachment policy. I extracted that, and I'm fine with the motion that it's being referred back. I just want to get some clarification. So if somebody doesn't mind moving the motion to refer it back as per the committee recommendation, Councillor Seymour Fagan, seconded by Councillor Vail. I'm just wondering if, there she is, Robin can join. You're quick. Thanks, Robin. So I'm hearing from some members that there's a little bit of confusion around the public process, and I know you touched on it in the last meeting. So I just want to get some clarification. We're going to bring back some recommendations based on our discussion for the March Committee of the Whole, which will be endorsed at the March Council meeting. And then you're putting in place a public process to go out over the course of a part of the summer. So these recommendations that we're bringing back in March, are they just sort of the framework for this agreement? I mean, or is council making a decision and then you're going out to the public? Or are we just sort of putting some guidelines around it? You're going to take those ideas out to the public, see what the public has to say, and then in the fall, come back with a follow-up report. Council can firm up their recommendations, and then those recommendations will be implemented in 2022. So I'm just looking for a bit of clarification, because I've heard from a few residents that are confused.
Certainly, and I apologize for the confusion. The intent is that in March, we'll come forward with some revisions to the draft docking policies that we provided to you in February. And if that is satisfactory to council, then we'll roll forward with the jump-in platform on our website to interact with the public, see what they think of the proposed docking policy. It will not be passed in March, but council will be satisfied with it, that we can commence the public consultation process. We will run that consultation process over the summer and then return the matter back to council in the fall, at which time we will let council know what comments we received so they can reassess if they're still satisfied with the docking policy draft that went out to the public. And if so, then they will pass in September the revisions to the docking policy.
And the idea is they would be to be implemented in 2022? Is that the overall general idea by doing that work this year?
Well, that's correct. Some individuals have existing licenses or agreements with the city, so those remain in place and are not affected by policy. However, the next phase of proactive enforcement would be scheduled for 2022, which would enable that a new area that hasn't undergone proactive docking to come into compliance with the docking policy and have all those docks in that area be licensed.
Okay, that's good. So I guess my only other comment is, the more I think about this, and I like the idea of the public process, it's unfortunately we can't get out, face to face to the public right now, but we can certainly do some work with that. But, I just think it's important that, we have a fee, we know we need to license these, we know that, there needs to be an encroachment agreement, and we know there needs to be insurance on these docks for the protection of all residents. And if there's some way as part of those consultations, we can sort of put that out to the residents and say, you with docks on city property, this is what we require as a city. How do you, what are your ideas for us rolling that out and implementing it, rather than us sort of telling them this is what we want to do? And I just wonder if you can make that part of the discussion. Maybe there's some ideas out there of, how we can implement and enforce this or roll this out that we haven't thought of on our end, just as part of that public process. But understanding that, council's agreed, we have to put some parameters in place. We can't just go back to a free-for-all. We need to control this, but we're looking for ideas on how, how some of you folks who have these docks, how do you feel the best way is to implement these procedures? So I just say that so that if you can just keep it in mind. That's good, thank you. And the motion is fine, we don't need to move anything there. I just wanted to put that out there. Any other questions or comments, Councillor Ashmore?
Yeah, just to comment there, like I personally feel that we're doing it backwards, because really what we should be doing is getting the public consultation now. And now is difficult, but when I mean public consultation, it should be all this year, right into the fall. And then that's when we put this policy together, because I can assure you, it's caused a lot of stress and grief for a lot of people in the last few weeks. And I think we're not doing it the right way. You can't just put a policy together and then this is what's going to be March 9th, and then we're going to bring that to the public. Why not ask the public first and then we formulate the policy? That's just my opinion, and I don't know where it's going to go from here, but obviously it's going to be formulated and brought. We're going to find out a week from today what it's going to be. So that's what people are saying. They're going to look on the website on March 3rd. If it's posted a week before council date, committee of the whole, that's what it's going to be. So they had absolutely no public input.
Well, I think those were kind of tied to my comments. This is a draft policy that's coming forward in March. These are a concept that we're proposing to go out to the public. So what we don't want to do is tell the public, these are the rules. Now we're coming out to see what you think. This is a draft policy, and it'll be finalized over the summer with public input, and council will have an opportunity in the fall to finalize that process. So that's what I was trying to get clarification on the process for the public, because there is a lot of misinformation out there, and they need to know that we're putting some guidelines in place. We want to hear what they think about it. It's going to come back in the fall with their comments. Council can change it and put any kind of final policy they want in place. That'll take place in 2022. So that's why I wanted to talk to it here today, to make sure we had clarification. Go ahead.
No, mine was, you said you didn't need to do anything, but we extracted that. Don't we need to pass it?
We've got a motion as printed. We have that already. It was just more of a discussion about what's coming back in March. So I think we're good.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you meant that it's done and we don't have to do anything.
Yeah. No, it's a motion as printed, so we'll just carry on with that if everybody's good with that. We have a mover and a seconder. Any other comments on the policy? Councillor Ashmore?
Just one final thing. it's really such an individual situation for each place that they're contemplating changes and reductions and whatnot. That's the thing about this. It is complicated, and we're making it more complicated, unfortunately, because there's so many different situations in each location. That's the thing that we're getting into. So each place is different with its own situation and its own problems, and maybe some of them don't have problems, but that's the thing, is so many different areas that it's going to be affected, and we can't paint everything with the same brush. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, we can't have a common policy for everybody, because it doesn't apply to everybody, because everybody has a different situation depending on where they are. Well, we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Thanks. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Thanks, Ms. Carlson. Appreciate it. So that's our committee of the whole. Item 10.3 is business arising from the Planning Advisory Committee. Sorry, let me find it here. So I need a motion that the minutes of the February 10th, 2021 Planning Advisory Committee meeting be received, and the recommendations included section 10.3 of the agenda. Save and accept 10.3.3 has been extracted by Councillor Ashmore, the report plan 2021-005. Are there any other extractions from the Planning Committee reports? Then that motion, except for 10.3.3 of the agenda, be adopted. Can I get, you'll move that, Councillor Vail, seconded by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. Any questions? All in favor? That's passed. And 10.3.3, Councillor Ashmore, your extraction.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I guess, planning, if I could get a question answered on that, please. I just wanted to know what is the issue here, because these folks here...
Let me just dial up the director, Ron, and see if we can get him on the line. Is Director Marshall, are you available? There you are. Welcome. Councillor Ashmore has a question about the Pigeon Lake Road Report Plan 2021-005. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the issue is right now, like why it has to go back to staff. Like, I still haven't got a clear answer, of why it's gone back. If you could just summarize, please.
Sorry, if I could just remind you what this application's for?
It's the Pigeon Lake Road application. I've got it here in front of me. It's regarding the permit a woodworking shop as an additional use, including a reduction in the parking requirements, along with an increase in lot coverage for the accessory building. It was a butcher shop at one point, or a zone for a butcher shop, and they're changing it to a new use. So go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so that particular application, we were still looking for them to justify the sort of the planning rationale for that one. There was also some environmental concerns on the property, I don't think related specifically to this, but also that had to be addressed. So there were a number of comments and issues that were still to be resolved on that particular application.
Maybe Councillor Vail is the chair of the committee, but I'm on the committee, Councillor Ashmore, and to me, I seem to remember there's not a lot of issues with this one overall. This was the public meeting so that the public had an opportunity. As the director said, they haven't received all their information and studies and reports in yet, but I seem to recall the planner at the time said they were going to turn this one around pretty quick. There wasn't a whole lot of issues, and they would have it back to the planning committee sometime in the next month or two. So it wasn't necessarily any issues, it's just that process of the public meeting. So do you recall anything different, Councillor Vail?
No, I was going to do the same thing, that their planners didn't seem to have an issue with it being sent back, and they knew that there was other items that they needed to provide, and we're in the process of getting that put together. So I don't see an issue there.
And I seem to recall the consultant was fine with the referral as long as it was turned around fairly promptly, and I think the planner at the time committed to doing that, Councillor Ashmore. So if you're okay with that? Okay. Can I get a motion then from someone to move the recommendation as printed? Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, seconded by Councillor Vail. Any further questions on that report? All in favor? That's passed. We'll go over to consent reports. Councillor Vail, you have the consent. So I've got extractions from our reports. 11.11. Sorry, Councillor Elmsley, you're right. Councillor Vale's got the extraction, that's what's confusing me. So 1111 is Councillor Vale, extracted the lease extension 322 Kent. I have 1115, the dock license application at 114 Front Street East in Bobcaygeon has been extracted by Councillor Seymour Fagan. I have 1116, the municipal credit rating has been extracted by Councillor Ashmore. I have 1117, the health unit 2020 budget arrears has been extracted by Councillor Ashmore. I have 1119, the RFP supply and delivery of one new rescue pumper has been extracted by Councillor Yeo. And I have 11110, the request for traffic calming on Logie Street has been extracted by Councillor O'Reilly. Are there any other extractions from reports? Seeing none, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dunn, that all the proposed resolutions shown in sections 11.1 of the agenda be approved and adopted by council in the order that they appear on the agenda and sequentially numbered, save and except for items 11.11, 11.15, 11.16, 11.17, 11.19, and 11.110.
You got it, thank you. Any questions on the remaining reports? All in favor? That's passed. First extraction is the lease extension and amending agreement 322 Kent Street West in Lindsay. Councillor Vale, go ahead.
Thanks. I've just got some questions. So the lease at 322, my impression over the last number of years has been that we've been slowly trying to get out of these leases. And my impression was, you know, we built the Lindsay Street building and we're going to consolidate, you know, and get out of Peel Street, and that the Kent Street facility was a temporary thing as we rejigged everything, right? So is that correct? Is that the understanding?
Ms. Carlson, go ahead.
Yes, we are looking to reduce our footprint. However, one of the reasons that we relocated our staff from 12 Peel to 322 Kent was actually for accessibility reasons. This building being fully accessible and 12 Peel not being fully accessible. To date, my understanding is that we are unable to further shrink our footprint, but of course we continue to look at that, and with COVID-19 changing the working dynamic, we continue to look at that. So it may be more of a consideration for the lease renewal next time this renews.
Okay, and that goes to my concern, right? With the changes from COVID, I'd be interested in, I know engineering is housed out of there, but for the last year, I'd be curious the number of people in engineering that's been working from home and not from the office. And is there a possibility in the future that some of those numbers are going to stay the same thing? I guess my concern is that things are changing on the landscape, and we're talking about going into a 5-year lease at, you know, $190,000 a year plus for 5 years. Myself, I think I'd be more comfortable looking at a 1-year term and working towards consolidating in our own facilities and get out of this altogether.
You want to comment, Ms. Carlson?
We tend to see better annual lease rates when we do longer terms. So if we did a 1-year term, the concern would be that it takes several years to design the reduction of the footprint, make sure that we have the money in the budget for fitting up the new space, and of course it may come to pass that we are unable to get out of this lease, but maybe reducing the footprint in this lease. So the concern would be we would be expending a high annual cost and therefore not able to move over. I might direct these comments to Director Shanks, as he has a lot more experience in moving into buildings, but it seems to me that the fastest we can move is on a 5-year turnaround. But I'll direct that over to Director Shanks.
Hello, thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, and to council. Ms. Carlson is definitely correct on that. Doing it any quicker than 5 years would be very much a challenge. I can advise right now that of the current stock that we have, we certainly do not have room. There's 17,000 square feet of space that we are leasing at 322, and there is no other facility within the city of Kawartha Lakes that can provide that. There's about 65 staff in total. I know that the councillor talked about engineering. It also is the home base for the majority of public works administrative staff as well. Ms. Carlson is correct. We will continue to look at what our options are, specifically as it relates to non-municipally owned facilities. But I do not believe that the opportunity will be there within the next 5 years, even considering COVID-19 and the changes that's been made to how we work. Many of both the engineering and public works staff that work out of that facility, even during this time, have had to have access to that facility, if not full-time, on part-time basis, due to some of the needs that they have and working from home not being able to provide for that. So it is something we look at, but I believe a 5-year term for this current lease agreement is in fact the smart way to go. And as has already been mentioned, we have downsized through the construction of the 68 Lindsay Street by getting out of the 12 Peel Street lease, and that was $160,000 per year, so we've reduced that. And as Ms. Carlson has suggested, there was reasons for that, and that is why that was the priority for ending a lease. There's currently been no real talk as to what a date might be for when we could get out of a 322 Kent Street lease and the need for that facility.
Thank you.
I'll give you a motion as printed, and I've got a follow-up motion.
Okay, motion as printed. Get a seconder. Councillor Seymour Fagan. You don't need to speak to that. Any questions on the lease agreement or as printed? All in favor? That's passed. Follow-up motion, Councillor Vail.
I'd like a report to come back on the feasibility or a plan to consolidate building facilities and get out of 322, and I'd like to see it before the end of the year, please.
Councillor Yeo, thank you. You've spoken to it already. You need to, do you want to speak to it? Go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't think this is new. Like, don't we have a report sitting and collecting dust somewhere on just this thing within the past couple of years? And it involved talk of creating a block in City Hall and downtown and all kinds of stuff. So maybe it's a matter of blowing the dust off that and updating something, but I think I'd like to see it too. Thank you.
Okay. Are you clear on the motion? Okay. Councillor Elmsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you, and maybe some clarification, are we not getting a report back on new ways to do business coming out of COVID, how we might change things up? And rather than ask staff for another report, couldn't this be included as part of that report?
I'll refer to the CAO, but I think the report coming back is more on service levels and how we deliver those services. I think that's coming back fairly soon, this spring. I think this maybe is more of a broader report from a building perspective, but I'll ask the CAO to comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so for the report back with respect to service levels and just changes as a result of the pandemic, we're targeting Q2, so it will be coming in the spring. Probably will overlap a little bit. We'll touch on our work from home experience and sort of what are some of the numbers to at least inform that conversation with council overall. Probably this motion is good, separate and distinct, to look at it as more of our overall building footprint, how we're utilizing our existing buildings, both at, I'd say, office and otherwise, and then it would form part of that report.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
Okay. Councillor Ashmore, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to speak against the motion because if you actually talk to the people that work there, they really like 322 Kent Street. It's centrally located. They've spent a lot of money on a new car park. Engineering and public works are actually together for the first time. I can't believe that we're even thinking about trying to uproot them again. We finally got some stability. We finally got a good combination here. We need to get engineering and public works together. Finally got them together. Now we're thinking about tearing them apart again. So I just don't think it's the time to do it. We've got them into a nice location. That building has been extensively renovated by the Government of Ontario. They look after that building. Lots of parking, and it's fully functional, and the employees like it. So I don't think there's a necessity for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the follow-up motion? Councillor Seymour Fagan?
I just have a comment on something Councillor Ashmore said. Public Works and Engineering have been in the same building on Peel Street, so they were together then.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Vail, do you want to sum up?
Thanks. I'd just like to see the report and have a discussion, and I agree with Councillor Yo's comments. We've talked about this before, and we've talked about options, but I think it's time we have a hard look at it and put some timelines in place as to accomplish it. And to Councillor Ashmore's point, I don't think that engineering and public works could or need to be tore apart or whatever. There's options in other buildings. My concern is just simply we've got a lot of buildings and we've got a lot of empty and not used space, and can something be renovated or not renovated in our own building when we're spending $190,000 a year? That's a lot of money that could go into renovating one of our own facilities to use forever. That's where I'm coming from.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Motion's passed. Thank you. 1115 is the dock license application for 114 Front Street East in Bobcaygeon, extracted by Councillor Seymour Fagan. The motion in the report is that the report be received. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, through you. So received, and I also would like to, do I need a seconder for received? Because I have a motion after that.
No, you can do it all as one motion, receive and...
And I look at alternative number, actually the only other alternative, that they enter into a 5-year license with the municipality for a dock. On this report here, it says that it's navigable waterways.
So let me get a seconder.
Okay.
Okay, and then you can speak to it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Councillor Yo, you'll second that? Go ahead.
So there's about 5 to 10 other docks within, I'd say, 400 meters of this property. Also, it says, it said something about the dock, I don't know, that there's no agreement with TSW. That dock isn't a dock. It actually is a concrete pier that has probably been around for over 50 years. It does have a wooden top on it. That's it. So I would like to have this for the 5-year agreement if they can make sure that they tick all the boxes for our legal team. Thank you.
And our legal is on the screen, so if we have any questions, we can confirm whether, Councillor Yo, you seconded it. Do you want to speak to it?
Briefly, I'm looking at the pictures and stuff, and I don't know about the concrete pier underneath, but if there is a concrete pier underneath, then I would imagine that it was permitted by the Trent Severn Waterway. I'm not going to say it was, but the report assumes it wasn't, so I'm going to assume it is. And I see it's very small. It doesn't jet out into the channel, and I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be given a 5-year lease. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? The solicitor's on the line if anybody has a question. Okay, I'll call the question on the motion. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Thanks, Robin. So our next is 1116, is the extraction by Councillor Ashmore, the municipal credit rating. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just want to thank staff for putting this together. A couple things here. The original motion by myself and Councillor O'Reilly at the time was to staff be directed to study alternative sources of funding for Kawartha Lake's capital and operating needs. I really didn't see a lot of that in here. I'll get to that in a second, but the credit rating, I feel, it should really apply to your personal credit rating. I mean, if you actually, no credit rating is worse than having a bad credit rating, because you have nothing to, if you need to get financing, in a hurry. We have the benefit of lower interest rates, but that may not be here forever. I mean, I lived through 24% interest rates. Maybe I'm dating myself, but when I was quite young starting out in farm, we paid 24% in August of 1981. And I know those days aren't going to come back, but they could come back. And we need to look at, instead of waiting and having handouts, waiting for handouts for provincial and federal government, handouts and debt, that's how we raise money, it seems, and reserves. So why not look at getting a credit rating? It's good to have one. There's nothing wrong with it. Peterborough had one, has one. Other municipalities have it. When you look at, there was page 325, says, recommended that the city consider a credit rating and bond issuance once the ongoing debt issuance exceeds 25 million. So in other words, 25 million. So in other words, we're going to wait till we max everything out before we get our credit rating. I think we should be getting our credit rating now and be prepared. So I'll move a motion here. Before I get to this motion here, I'll move to receive, I guess.
Move to receive,
Yeah.
seconded by
Yeah.
Councillor Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. So let's, if you're going to do a follow-up, let's vote on that then. All in
Yeah.
favor? That's passed. Follow-up motion, Councillor Ashmore?
I would make a motion there, please, to the council direct staff to obtain a credit rating and report back on the results. So just staff to look into it further.
Okay, get a seconder, and you can speak to it. Seconder for a credit rating? Yep.
Clarification on the motion, he said obtain a credit rating, and then in his rationale, he said look into it more. So they're kind of contrary to each other. So what is the motion?
Well, I'll just rate what staff printed here, that council directs staff to obtain an indicative credit rating and report back on the results. So I'm just reading what staff put down. That's what the author put down, that council directs staff to obtain an indicative credit rating and report back on the results. I'm just exactly what they said.
So let's get clarification from the
Yeah,
director.
I could just ask a question, what's indicative mean?
Yeah, let's, Director Stover, are you available? There you are, hello. So we're just talking about the municipal credit rating. I don't know if you heard the conversation, but Councillor Yeo has a question on your alternative, that council directs staff to obtain an indicative credit rating and report back on the results. What exactly does that mean?
So an indicative credit rating isn't a full credit rating. It would give us just that. It would give us an indication of if we were going to actually obtain a credit rating, what it would likely turn out to be. But it's not an actual credit rating. It's not something we could use and go out and issue bonds. But it will give us a sense of where we stand.
You'll second that? You'll second that? Okay. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Ashmore?
No, I think it's just makes good business sense to have a look into this, as the director explained. It's an indication of what your credit is. It's always good to have that. So in case when we really need it, when we need the funds, we have this to fall back on. You know, we can't be, like I said before, always relying on government grants and going in further into debt and raiding reserves. You know, we have to have other alternatives. So I'd appreciate your support.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo, you seconded it. Do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I will second it after hearing the explanation. Usually when I hear credit rating, government, and debt in the same sentence, I run. But in this case, being indicative, I'll support it. Thank you.
Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question through you to the director. What's the cost of obtaining this rating?
I believe that the cost is $32,000.
Is that the cost of the indicative rating that we're proposing in this alternative? You would still have to go through that same process?
Yeah, so I think how it works is you'd pay the $32,000, we'd get the indicative rating, and then if we wanted to actually go and get a credit rating, that $32,000 would be applied against that.
Yeah, I'm going to speak against it. Borrowing money, whether we borrow money on our credit rating, is the same thing as borrowing money from the government, is borrowing money from me. Borrowed money is borrowed money. There's absolutely no difference between us borrowing money by issuing a bond and borrowing money because we get a better rate from the, so I just don't see the need to spend $32,000 for something that, oh, look at that, we've got an A1 credit rating. So I'm going to speak against the motion here.
Yeah, and maybe Director, Councillor Elmslie, you had your, but you're okay? I'm a little bit confused because the mover's talking about we keep going into debt, so let's get a credit rating. But the credit rating is just to access different financial institutes, and you've kind of explained it here. We have lots of debt capacity left. You know, it makes sense if you're a bigger borrower. We're not really a bigger borrower, so you've kind of laid it out. So it's debt regardless, right? It's either getting a credit rating and issuing bonds or going, however we go about it, we're borrowing money and as a municipality going further into debt. Or if we just use Infrastructure Ontario like we do now, we're going into debt. So it all counts against our debt capacity, correct?
Correct. So regardless of how we obtain debt, it all counts the same. So if we were to get a credit rating and issue bonds, it would still be debt. It would still count towards our debt limit. What we were trying to get across in this report is currently the city borrows such a small amount small in relative terms, but such a small amount on an annual basis. It's less than 20 million on an annual basis. The cost of obtaining a credit rating and maintaining that credit rating just aren't, they're not cost, there's no cost benefit to it until we start to borrow more money on a regular basis. And so, you know, we're not opposed to this idea. Our recommendation is that we wait, and as our debt limit or our annual borrowing starts to creep up and it financially makes sense where we could save money by issuing bonds rather than borrowing through IO, that at that point staff would come forward and make the recommendation to council that now it makes sense to get a credit rating and let's go forward and start issuing bonds. But at this point, we just don't borrow enough money on an annual basis to make it, to make the cost benefit there.
So just as a follow-up, there's an argument that get our credit rating now when we're not too far in debt, but if we got further into debt over the next 10 years, and then wouldn't our credit rating be downgraded as a result of getting further into debt, and that payment ratio that, you know, that everybody depends on, if we got further into debt and then wanted to start using our credit rating, wouldn't it be, I'm not seeing the advantage of getting a credit rating if we're not ready to use it. So can you help me understand that?
Sure. So you're absolutely right. There isn't really a benefit to us getting a credit rating now. If you look at page 6 of 9 of the report, Moody's and Standards & Poor are the two main companies that will do credit ratings, and there's an annual fee attached to that. So if we were to get a credit rating today, even if we never used it, we're looking to spend somewhere between $23,000 and more each year just to maintain that credit rating. And in addition to that, there's a huge amount of effort from the staff perspective in order to gather the information and to provide the information and maintain it. So it costs a fair amount of money on an annual basis just to say we have a credit rating, and it really doesn't do anything for us other than to say we have it. And yes, depending on your circumstances, how much debt you have, what's happening with growth, there's a myriad of factors that would determine whether or not our credit rating stayed where it was or if it went down over time.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, and through you, I think the director just answered my question. I was looking at the cost projection of maintaining that credit rating from year to year. So I guess you're looking at roughly $23,000 with the $32,000 up front first.
Yes. I just got a follow-up from Councillor Dunn. Is there anybody who hasn't commented and wants a comment, question? Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just a quick comment. Last time I made a statement on this, I was tentatively against it. And when I found out it's going to cost me an extra 23 grand every year for something we don't need, I've really solidified my position about being against it.
Oh, great. Any further comments? Thank you. And I'll ask Councillor Ashmore to sum up. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director. Director Stover, I had a question. On page 2 of 9, in the original motion, it said that staff explore the creation of Kawartha Lake savings bonds and/or equity shares as a method of increasing our capital funding. What I mean by bonds, I don't mean like I'm not a bond person, but I mean bond trader, but not the bonds that you go out, stocks and bonds. I mean like savings bonds, like the government of Canada, they issue savings bond and people buy them. And if you have, like, for example, Kawartha Lake savings bond, I just coined that phrase, you would have people who say if they want to invest in their own municipality, they could buy a debenture in their municipality without us having to. They would be paid an interest, they would be paid a dividend or an interest rate, return on their investment. But I didn't see this in the report, and I'm just wondering why that wasn't in the report.
So through the mayor, that is exactly what the report's referring to. So if we were to issue bonds, we would first need to get a credit rating. The credit rating, and depending on where we fall out in the credit rating, determines how marketable our bonds would be and would determine what rate we would be able to attract those bonds to. So the first step is we need to decide, do we want to get a credit rating? If we do, we get the credit rating, and then we could go about issuing bonds, as you're suggesting, as a means of generating equity within the organization and getting some additional funding. It still counts, though, as debt in the overall scheme, because we have to pay that money back.
Do you want to sum up, or are you good
I'm
on
good,
your
thanks.
motion?
I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, you clear on the motion? Okay, everybody's clear? I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion fails. Okay, so it's just a motion to receive. We'll leave it at that. Good discussion, though. Thank you. Thanks, Director. 1117 is the Halliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit 2020 budget arrears, extracted by Councillor Ashmore. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my question would be through you to Councillor Elmsley. So this amount here that we're asking for, 167,000, that is the amount that came to the budget, the extra that we were short of, which included this list, enhanced food safety initiative, and all the other list here that was on this page. Is that correct?
We've already approved the 2021 budget for the health unit. So this is for 2020, the outstanding amount that was billed by the health unit for the increase they received from the province as a result of going from the 75-25 split to the 70-30 split on those programs that used to be billed at 100% to the province. So the difference netted out to 167,000 and change that we, the City of Kawartha Lakes, did not pay to the health unit in 2020.
We put out a request to our board and agencies in 2019, and if you recall, to come back with a 0% budget increase just to help our costs. Most of our boards and agencies did, but the health unit, as a result of exactly what Councillor Elmsley is telling you, came back with this increase as part of their budget. Our council at the time chose to, take the stand with all the boards and agencies, do a 0% increase, so it was never paid. I would say we are obligated to pay it. We wanted to make a statement. I believe we did. It's where we go from here. How hard do you want to get your hand slapped? But I think we need to pay it now. I think they got our message. Their model is much better than it used to be, and I think we need to settle up. But you extracted it, so go ahead.
I'll leave it.
You'll just leave it? Okay. Councillor Yeo?
I'll move as printed.
As printed, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Elmsley. Any further questions or comments? Call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. 1119 is the next extraction. The RFP supply and delivery of one new rescue pumper. Councillor Yeo, your extraction, sir?
Yes, I'd just like to refer this to the next council meeting. for information in closed session.
So refer to the next, the March council meeting closed session, and are you looking for the RFP information in closed, just for rationale to go into closed?
Yes, the RFP information in closed session.
Be supplied with the report in closed?
Yes.
The RFP evaluation?
Yes.
Thank you. Moved by you, seconded by Councillor Dunn. Do you want to speak to it? Go ahead.
I think a motion to refer is non-debatable. Yes. Just time?
So we're okay with the March council meeting? Good catch, thank you. I'll call the question then. All in favor? That's passed. Okay, thank you. 11-110, moved by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, request for traffic calming on Logie Street.
I'll give you a motion to receive, and then I'll ask the question, if I get a seconder.
Motion to receive, seconded by Councillor Seymour Fagan. Call the question. All in favor? That's passed. You have a follow-up or a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, through to, I believe our Director Rojas is on. Is he on today?
Is it Director Engineering? Yep.
Through to Director Rojas, we talked earlier, so just to confirm the status of these bike lanes. These bike lanes, are they, that's proposed in this report, are they part of the subdivision agreement, or what's the status of them?
So thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. There was a couple processes that happened in the past. One was a draft plan of subdivision for a country club. Bromont Homes Inc. took that over. And the realignment of Logie Street. So the realignment of Logie Street was identified in a previous DC, and both of them had bike lanes. So when we realigned Logie Street, we took extra width in accordance with the plan of subdivision. And the ultimate goal was to stripe it to a bike lane, at least that portion of it, to provide connectivity to the trailhead at the Victoria Rail Trail and the Trans-Canada Trail where they meet. So it made sense from a planning point of view, from a process point of view. The trigger was essentially built out of the country club subdivision, which got topped last year, and we're anticipate to assume that subdivision in the fall of this year. Again, it was a city-led project, the realignment of Logie Street, but it was implemented through the developer through a cost-sharing agreement. So the final bike lane configuration could easily be done under our striping program that we annually do every year.
Just to follow up, so then also in the report, and this is more probably due with Director Robinson, says though that maybe a bylaw should be passed that no winter snow removal, but it would appear that that full road is being snow plowed now, so that we wouldn't really need to have special bylaw because people do ride their bikes different times of the year for sure. Director Robinson.
To chime in, there was at the intersection of Logie and Dobson, there's a Morningside subdivision in that quadrant that had a boulevard multi-use trail. So there's an asphalt, 3-meter wide asphalt platform on the south side of Dobson Street, I believe, that is also part of that network. The one on Logie Street would be on the road itself. So it does get plowed, but the frequency of the plow could be questioned in regards to the minimum maintenance standard. But I will defer to Director Robinson for that.
Hello, Director. So the question is just regarding proposed bike lanes on Logie Street. Winter maintenance, you say there's an additional cost for winter maintenance of bike lanes. We either pass a bylaw to close the bike lanes in the winter, it's a non-issue, or is the whole street, I think the question, the whole street's being plowed now, so why would we not just continue to plow the whole street and not really worry about the bike lanes in the winter?
So you're absolutely right. There's two choices for council to make in the matter. We do plow the road in accordance with minimum maintenance standards for road activity. The minimum maintenance standards has a different level of service requirement for operation of bike lanes, because obviously it's not as easy to drive a bicycle in the snow or slush as it would be a vehicle. So the maintenance requirements are different. So although we would be plowing the road still for general road maintenance, there will be an enhanced level of service requirement on those bike lanes if they are designated as bike lanes on Logie Street. So we will be expending additional resources to ensure we meet minimum maintenance standards if the bike lanes are expected to be open and maintained through the winter. So those are the options for council.
So just for my clarification, what would the extra maintenance be to meet the minimum standard for a bike lane? Just, I'm not aware of that. Just help.
Yeah, so those are requirements that are relatively new within MMS. Again, we typically plow at a certain depth of snow, which is 8 centimeters of snow accumulation prior to release. Again, a bicycle that is expected to be able to ride through that would not be able to do so safely. So there's enhanced levels of requirement for clear bare pavement for bike lanes. So I haven't had an opportunity to look at what the actual cost impacts would be related to that. When the report was brought to me, I just made it a note that if we did continue to provide that service to the winter, there would be an enhanced cost related to that activity.
Thank you. Come on, Councillor O'Reilly, put some bike lanes in.
As it is now, we're going to, I would certainly say that part of the motion would be that we install the bike lanes, we do the painting, and if they're not knowing the cost of the minimum standard, I guess we could pass a bylaw that where there's no winter maintenance, extra winter.
Close the bike lanes in the winter.
Close the bike lanes in the winter.
So your motion that bike lanes be installed on Logie Street and that a bylaw be brought forward to close the bike lanes in the winter.
That'd be correct.
Beautiful. Seconder, Councillor Seymour Fagan, thank you. Do you want to speak to it any further?
No, it's all in the report, thank you. I just think that's a great park, and so many people are going to be biking to that park as well. And I think bike lanes would be, and the street's lots wide enough as it is.
I think we're finally getting up with the times. A bike lane on Logie Street, it's a wide street. It's a great park. People can access the park, and it hooks up to the Victoria Rail Trail where people can bike, and it makes perfect sense as a section of our city to put a bike lane in. So I wholeheartedly support your motion. Councillor Seymour Fagan, do you want to speak to it? Second it? No? Councillor Elmsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we calling them bike lanes or are we calling them paved shoulders?
Bike lanes with little bikes drawn on them.
Okay.
Any questions, comments? Good Lord, people, they're just bike lanes. They do them all over the world. It's a look of shock. We're going to have a bike lane in Kawartha Lakes. What are we going to do? Any further questions or comments? You want to sum up, Councillor O'Reilly? No, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Thank you. Okay, we're moving right along here. We'll go over to bylaws. Are there any extractions from any of the bylaws? Councillor Yeo, I believe you have those, sir.
No.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Elmsley, that the bylaws shown in section 14.1 of the agenda, namely items 14.1.12 and including 14.1.17, be read a first, second, third time passed, numbered, signed, and the corporate seal attached.
Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. We have no notice of motion. I need a motion. Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, I believe you have the adoption of the closed session agenda as amended. We've added one report, so go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Ashmore, the closed session agenda be adopted as circulated and with the following amendments. The addition is 16.3.3, being a report by Lena Patterson, Manager of Human Resources, regarding Ontario Nurses ONA ratification.
Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in any closed session items? Seeing none, can I get a motion, please, to move into closed? Councillor O'Reilly, seconded by Councillor Vale. All in favor? That's passed. Let's take 10 minutes and we'll come back and do closed session. We've got some matters from close we need to deal with, so Deputy Clerk Sarah, go ahead.
Thank you. Matters from closed. Item 16.3.1, adoption of closed session minutes. The confidential closed session minutes from the January 28th, 2021 regular council meeting were approved. Item 16.3.2, report LGL 2021-002 regarding the secondary plan. A motion is required. The city solicitor provided an update to council on case PL 120217 before the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, being the City of Kawartha Lakes Official Plan 2012 and secondary plans thereto, and that the city solicitor presented council with Draft Order 1 and Draft Order 2 for its consideration, and that the mayor and all councilors were invited to attend the March 10th, 2021 Planning Advisory Committee meeting in order to hear from members of the public with respect to Draft Order 2, which establishes the pre-2012 urban settlement area boundaries, and with respect to the potential removal of the candidate sites from the urban settlement areas, and that following the meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee, this matter to return to council on March 23rd, 2021 for council recommendation to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal concerning Draft Order 1 and 2. And that's the end of that.
Need a mover and a seconder. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Deputy Mayor O'Reilly and Councillor Richardson. Recorded vote? Okay, it's no decision, but that's fine. Recorded vote requested by Councillor Ashmore. Okay, go ahead.
Councillor Richardson?
In favor?
Councillor Elmsley? In favor. Councillor Vale?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Reilly?
In favor.
Councillor Seymour Fagan? In favor. Councillor Yeo?
In favor?
Councillor Dunn?
In favor?
Councillor Ashmore?
Opposed?
Mayor Letham?
In favor. Motion passes 8-1.
Correct.
Thank you. And you had a follow-up motion, Councillor Yeo. Go ahead.
I do, and bear with me. Thank you. I'm going to start with I don't want to break this into two or not, but anyway, I'll give it a whirl as one. That staff be directed to prepare and facilitate minutes of settlement with each of the parties and to present those settlements to council as soon as possible. That council by resolution shall recommend to the LPAT the candidate sites and land that shall not be designated urban settlement area and not within the urban service boundary in the city's official plan and secondary plans. That council by resolution shall recommend to the LPAT the candidate sites and land that shall be designated urban settlement area and within the urban service boundary in the city's official plan and secondary plans. And that city planning staff and the planning consultant shall give the planning evidence to the LPAT in support of the minutes of settlement recommended by council to the LPAT. If I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Councillor Seymour Fagan will second it. Go ahead.
Thank you, and I just don't think we can wait any longer. This has been going on for, well, my math, 9 years, but it started well before 2012. But it says right in our own report on page 4, it says, in the interim, the city has been directed by the tribunal to provide notice and obtain public input by means acceptable to the city with respect to 1, the candidate sites, and 2, the lands located within the urban settlement areas shown in the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan, adopted and approved schedules that fall outside of the pre-2012 boundaries. The tribunal's decision issued February 9th indicates that the purpose of this notice is to allow the city to obtain input from the public, and particularly those stakeholders that may be potentially impacted by the decision of that tribunal is being asked to make in this proceeding with respect to Draft Order 2 and the realignment proposal at 1. Draft Order 2 does not propose to remove the candidate sites from the urban settlement area. This will provide council with an opportunity to consider public input and to make a recommendation to the tribunal with respect to any concerns that may arise as a result of council's decision to return to the pre-2012 boundaries. We need all this information, and we need it now. We're not going to wait till the last minute again on March 23rd or April 6th. We need the evidence in front of us. We need to know who's giving the evidence. Sure, it's easy to say, oh, the planners need the evidence. So do we. We need the evidence to say no. And it's on council. It's a direction to council from the LPAT. It's not direction to our lawyer. It's not direction to our CAO. It's to us, and this council needs the information. And I think the only way we can get it is by putting it in a resolution and getting it. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to speak to it, Councillor Seymour Fagan?
Sure, thank you. Wow, Emmett, that's very good, so thank you. Also, this was originally done pre-2012. That's almost 10 years ago. And as we've all seen, things have changed drastically. Now there's not a lot of land to build on anymore, and people want to move up. So I think that we definitely need to relook at this.
Councillor Helmsley?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think we need to get the information. I think there's a couple of things here. I think that the tribunal or the province has indicated to the planning department that they can play with the boundaries to a level of about 119 hectares, which can be split between the 5. And that gives them some play, and I don't wish to argue whether they have to prove they need it or not. I think that the province was saying, go ahead and do it. The other part of it is that if we're not going to hold up the process, because at the end of the day, if there's no agreement, then the LPAT is going to decree. They're just going to make a ruling and say that's the way it is, and there's no appeal to that ruling. So I think we're better off making our recommendations and having them turn them down or having them ask us to modify them rather than doing nothing and waiting. And I think also that the folks in our community who live here and want to develop the land and want to do things and create wealth for everybody in terms of, look at the housing market right now. Wouldn't it be great if we had this settled and we could be building houses, because we could sell almost every house we could build, but we're kind of constrained in what we can do. So I think that it's a good motion to get the information, and it's a good motion for council to make its recommendations to the LPAT. So thanks, Councillor Yeo, for bringing that forward.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, clarity? Councillor Riley?
Thank you. I don't mean to put our CAO on the spot. You just heard what's out there. I just wondered, being the former head of planning, if you would have any comment, or you don't have to comment if you don't wish to, because the recommendation just came forward now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks for the question. I honestly don't understand the resolution as written, because I just heard it. So, but I think there is some confusion just with respect to what the next step is that is being asked of you as council. Just a couple of general comments. So I'd say number one, you're not being asked to be a decision maker under the conventional Planning Act prescribed process. So the LPAT, these items are in front of the LPAT, and they're asking the city to facilitate public conversation about the candidate sites. You've already right now, we're a party, like others, at the hearings. So when you're making a decision, as was mentioned by the planner and solicitor, you will be making decisions with your client hat on, if you will. So those interests that you've building on what you've already directed our legal team at the LPAT. And so the process that's been asked of you to deliver or facilitate is you've already made the decision, direction, about the pre-2012 boundary. You've already determined that is acceptable to you. And you've given instruction accordingly, and that's been part of the discussions at the LPAT. The other, I don't want to say candidate sites, that's incorrect. The other properties that are surrounding outside, so the ones that were in the previous 2012 approved boundary, which added additional properties, those landowners are parties at the LPAT. So they're speaking for themselves. And I would suggest that this process isn't asking to revisit those particular issues, because you've already given instruction. What they're asking to do now is to say, I think somebody mentioned, the province is suggesting there's a bit of flexibility in terms of the actual boundaries that everybody can live with. So that needs to be put out into the public realm, because there's properties inside the 2010 boundary that are in the boundary. And so if the other parties outside want to trade and swap, and this is later on in the LPAT, the LPAT is saying, well, you better give public notice that these other candidate sites now could be impacted or be subject to discussion at the LPAT in the future. And so it's a courtesy to those other landowners. That's what you're being asked to facilitate. And on the 10th, there'll be all of the various different boundaries. And then the public record will be forwarded through you to the LPAT. And in the meantime, as a party now, put aside an approval authority, our solicitor will come back to you in a month and ask for your instruction with respect to Order 1 and Order 2 as a party at the LPAT, not as the approval authority previously and all the various iterations that have been approved or not. I don't know if that helps, but I honestly, I would have to I would recommend that we at least have an opportunity to give you good legal advice with respect to the proposed additional resolutions, because I just don't know off top of mind and right now what that will do to impact the process going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding of the motion is that we're, right now, we have a list of properties that was created by, and I'm not sure, I think by a whole bunch of people had input into creating that list of properties. I think what this motion is doing is seeking more information onto the list of candidate properties, like why are they candidate properties, and whether or not we agree that they should be candidate properties, so that going forward we can say, we agree with the recommendation, but candidate property A, B, and C, we think they're in the zone and they shouldn't be candidate. They should be recognized and continue to be recognized as developable properties. That's the way I understand the motion coming forward from the councillor, and based on my understanding, I'll support his motion.
Councillor Yeo?
Thank you, and just for a little more, so you see where my mind's coming from. This is the notice to council. This is where I take it kind of personally as being a councillor. 44.5, the tribunal shall notify the council as being given the opportunity to, A, reconsider its decision in light of the information and material. That's what I'm asking for, information and material. 44.6, the tribunal shall have regard to the council's recommendation if it is received within the time period referred to in subsection 44.4. I'm still trying to find subsection 44.4, but there's a lot of talking here about Tuesday, April 6, 2021. And again, I think I already read that part, that we will provide the case coordinator with a copy of the proposed Order 2 schedules. We shall do this, we will do this. It's not, to me, wills and shalls sound kind of mandatory, and I want to know what the hell I'm talking about and what I'm proposing when the pedal hits the metal, when the date hits whatever. And so I believe this will kind of put a spur in somebody's saddle and get things moving. Thank you.
Thank you. Was that your sum up? Sure. Thank you. Call, everybody's clear? Call the question, all in favor? Motion's passed. You have one more you need to read from close, correct?
Yes, thank you. One final matter from closed regarding item 16.3.3, report CORP 2021-007. Council provided direction on the ratification with Ontario Nurses Association.
Thank you for that. Councillor Elmsley? That's just a statement. I just thought you had a question. No, we're good. Councillor Vail confirming bylaw?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Richardson, that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of a regular council meeting held Tuesday, February the 23rd, 2021 be read a first, second, and third time, passed, numbered, signed, and the corporate seal attached.
Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. And a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Richardson and Ashmore, all in favor? That's passed. Thank you, folks. Please leave your purple copies here. Don't take them with you, your closed minutes. That's why they're on purple. I'll leave all your closed here.